good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you wherever and whenever you are tuning in. Welcome to our latest edition of What Caught My Eye, or WCME Sports. As always, I'm your host, the coach Nick Vesci. I'm joined by the boy Stephen Vesci,
What
the
up?
man Stephen Comlo, and our
Hello.
resident golf expert Nathan Bursak was kind enough to stop by today
Thanks again for
to
having
help
us.
discuss the Open Championship, formerly the British Open. But before we get there, a couple of housekeeping things. Remember, follow us on our socials at WCME_sports. That's on Instagram, on X, and on Facebook. Visit our website at WCMEsports.com. And make sure you check out Spotify and YouTube, because that's when our episodes drop every Wednesday at noon. Now, we like to start off each show by going through our top catch of the week, the thing that we thought caught our eye the most from this last week in the sporting landscape. And this week, we felt it had to be the Open Championship. Like I said, or formerly the British Open. I don't know when they changed it. When we were growing up, it was always the British Open. And it feels like in the last 5 years, you can't say that, it's the Open Championship. Maybe Scotland and Northern Ireland threw a fit and said, no, it's got to be the Open. But anyway, it's golf's oldest major. I think this is the 152nd playing of the Open Championship. We're at Royal Troon on the west coast of Scotland, up in northwest Scotland. And if you missed it, the winner of this tournament was Xander Schauffele. And if that name sounds familiar, that's because he also won a major earlier this year, the PGA Championship in May. So he won the Open by 2 strokes over Justin Rose, who Nathan pointed out he had to qualify for this tournament. Justin Rose, a mainstay, a former major champion, didn't even make it in on merit. He had to go through the qualifiers, the 36-hole qualifier to get here, and he finished tied for second at -7, 2 strokes back, along with Billy Horschel. Oh, Billy boy, when will you find what you're looking for? Billy Horschel, 2 strokes back. Xander, though, pulled away. I think Horschel came into the final round with a 1-stroke lead at -4, and Xander, 1 stroke back, kind of tore the course apart, especially on the challenging back 9. He shot a final round 65. What's interesting about that is at the PGA earlier this year, he also shot a final round 65 on his way to earning that championship. And it's the first time that we know of in the Masters era, so that's since 1934 when they first started playing the Masters, that a player has shot 65 or better in the final round of 2 or more majors in the same calendar year. So that's pretty amazing that he is the only one that's done that. It's the 4th lowest round by an Open Championship winner, final round by an Open Championship winner, which is also pretty amazing. A couple other just amazing things to put his year into perspective now, since he came into this year with so many close calls. He's the first player and 6th overall since Rory McIlroy in 2014 to win the PGA and the Open in the same year. Can you guess who the only person is to do it twice? Anyone? Tiger. Yeah, the only logical guess. Did it twice. Shocker, right? Xander's the 6th player ever also to win his first 2 majors of his career in the same calendar year, which is pretty amazing. He's the first player since Brooks Koepka in 2018 to win more than 1 major in a calendar year. So just, I thought, pretty remarkable. And Kamala before the show was talking about the Americans' dominance in the majors. All 4 majors this year were won by Americans. It's the first time since 1982 that all 4 majors were won by America. And the U.S. has won 7 consecutive majors, which is their longest streak since they won 13 straight from 1974 to 1977. Before we get into breaking down this a little more, just a couple last things. The top 5 we're talking about. Tristan Lawrence kind of came out of nowhere. He finished 4th at -6. He's the 98th ranked player in the world. He had never finished inside the top 60 at a major, so pretty amazing to finish 4th here. And Russell Henley, I think a Bulldog from UGA, he finished 5th at -5. Anything I missed before we start firing questions across Nathan's
Why
back?
I got why the British Open, why it's not the British Open, it's just the Open.
Was it because of tennis?
No, it has nothing to do with it. I found it on the open.com, like the Open's official website, and they're all they feel a little uppity about this thing. They basically said it's the Open because there was nothing else, and then all the other, like the U.S. had theirs. I think Italy had one, France had one, so it was all the specialized ones. But it was always referred to as the Open inside like the UK. And for golfers or whatever, the golf purists, it was always the Open and not the British Open. So it says the Open is the correct name for the championship. It is also the most appropriate. I'm going to call it the British Open just for that.
Thank you. And remember, they also blew a 13 colony lead at one point. So just just remember
As we
that.
like to
62
frequently
countries.
remind
Yeah, 62 countries have Independence Day from England. So
suckers.
suck on that.
All right, so
Suck on that.
I love it. So Nathan, kind of put a little perspective analysis on Xander. We talked earlier before the show about the year he's had. Kind of would you take Xander's year over Scotty's year? But just kind of tell us, what have you seen from him that has made this year different, where the close calls aren't there anymore? He's now claiming the victories and finishing the job.
I think we talked about it a good portion of our PGA Championship episode, just how the difficulty of the course comes into play and how these pros are able to navigate and work their way around certain situations. The Open Championship is unlike anything else these pros face on a yearly basis. The style of course is almost nearly impossible to replicate in the United States, even though some places have done a pretty good job. But I think when you see somebody flourish in a event or tournament such as the Open Championship, it really just kind of puts into perspective that every part of their game is clicking at the right time. So, I mean, there's kind of an old adage where they say, at any given round, 2 out of 3 aspects of your game are going to be working, and you got to accept the fact that the third isn't. So whether it's driving, iron play, ball striking, or putting / chipping, you're going to get 2 of those on a daily basis. So I think with Xander right now, he's in that zone where all 3 are clicking. So when something isn't working to how he might like it, it's being picked up by the other aspects of his game, and we saw that this week at the Open.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you said, it is so different. I think commonly talked about DeChambeau said something after he missed the cut about how he's going to have to adapt his game if he wants to compete at Open Championships, because he can't just blast the ball as high as he wants and have it land solid. You have to have all these different things in play. And the fact that Xander on the back 9 on Sunday when it mattered most, I think shot -4 on the back 9, something crazy like that is amazing. And, to your point, Nathan, Xander, I think, said that might have been the best round he's ever played in his life. Considering all the circumstances, now he had to execute, because you can't, like you said, in an Open Championship, you can't have any falters. Shane Lowry was, he had the 36-hole lead. He looked like he was cruising. And then on Saturday, just blew up, shot a 77, I think. And that's all the margin, because I think on Sunday he shot another 68, like a -3. So if you get rid of that margin, you kind of come out on top. It's so difficult to do in such a sport. Nathan, how will this year, from what we've seen in Xander, affect how we think of him going forward?
I think you have to finally consider him, and if you haven't already, because he's kind of always been the bridesmaid and never the bride, he's going to have to be the name that comes up at every major event now. Like, if he's in the field, people are going to not put him in the same category as like Scotty has been this year. But I think when you see his name now on a leaderboard, people have to consider that this is a man that's going to compete for the title that week. And that might not have been the case in previous years or earlier in this year, because he's always been the bridesmaid.
Yeah, it's amazing. At this moment, he and Scotty have the same number of majors, and Scotty's only won the same one. Xander is closer to the career Grand Slam than Scotty is. Xander also has a gold medal. Lest you forget, he's the defending gold medalist from the Tokyo Olympics. So he's, it almost seems like you said, he's now reached another echelon. He is now, every time we start a tournament, you got to talk about Xander, you got to talk about Scotty, you got to talk about Bryson. He's in that conversation now every time, regardless of the course, regardless of what's going on. So I think that's pretty amazing.
And real quick, like, when you say Scotty's only won 2 majors, I mean, a big part of that too is you got to understand that there are some courses that fit certain golfers to a T. And I don't want to say this about Scotty, but maybe Augusta is just his course. Like, because the U.S. Open changes every year and the Open changes every year, and he doesn't get that same rhythmic prep that he does at maybe Augusta. You hope that he wins other majors, but you might start to see a trend where he performs better at Augusta just because he's familiar with it. And it might just be at the tee boxes. He likes the way that the holes fit his eye. It could be the shot shape. It could be a whole bunch of things. But, I mean, you got to factor that into when you talk about courses and players and where they're playing and whatnot.
Is Scotty still going to be the favorite in any tournament he enters regardless? Like, does this change who might be the favorite? Or is Scotty, from here until you have anything else go on, he's still going to be your favorite?
I think right now, based on this year, it's Scotty and Xander. I mean, Xander hasn't missed the cut at a major this year, and I could be wrong. That's just off the top of my head. But Bryson and Rory both missed the cut this year at the Open. So you kind of got to look at it too and say, yeah, Scotty's having one heck of a year, but Xander's up there with him now with 2 majors. And
yeah, do you want his Xander's major finishes?
Absolutely.
So Xander at Augusta finished 8th. Valhalla won. U.S. Open at Pinehurst finished 7th, and then obviously won the Open.
So how does that compare to Scotty's finishes? 4 top 10s and majors, 2 victories. That's pretty. I mean, it's hard to do better unless you're Tiger Woods.
What were Scotty's finishes?
I gotta keep talking.
Well,
give me some time.
Yeah.
Because,
so I was.
Well, hold on, Nick, real quick. Sorry.
Okay.
Because and I understand that this is probably a conversation that needs to happen because Xander just won a second major this year, but I also think going back the other way is I don't know if it's really fair to Scotty to kind of dethrone him just because he couldn't putt at the Open, right? I mean, I think traditionally this is a tournament where Americans come in and Nathan, you talk about those 3 things: driving, chipping, putting, right? And more often than not, Americans are going to struggle on the putting side of things coming into this tournament because traditionally greens are a lot slower when you play an open course, and you compound the weather elements. I mean, look how far players had to adjust their aim day 2 and 3 just because of the wind, right? That's not anything that any American player can prepare themselves for. So I've seen a lot of people talking about oh, Scotty's putting woes are back. No, they're not. they're just not. And it's not unfair. It's not fair to say that after just a performance like he had at the Open. I mean, he was still, for the large part, the only reason he wasn't in contention is because Xander played lights out on Sunday. He was very much in the conversation Sunday morning.
Yes. But I mean, it kind of brings back to my other point of we're going into the Olympics. I think next weekend, so not this coming weekend, but the next weekend is when they'll play the golf tournament for the Olympics. Are you taking Xander or Scotty to be the favorite to win? That's kind of my question.
That's tough.
Considering Xander is the defending gold medalist, he's been in this position at this type of tournament and he's won this before. It's something, that has to count, right, for something when you head into this.
Yeah, I would say they're obviously the favorites, but at the risk of you guys not inviting me back, I don't think either of them wins the gold medal this year.
Oh,
I don't know if you guys
get out.
Says the man wearing a USA shirt.
Yeah, it doesn't mean I can't support him.
Whoa,
well then, no. Who do you think will win then?
I honestly think it's any man's game. If you think back to when the Ryder Cup was back in France a couple of years ago, we struggled. The United States struggled mightily. And this course, I don't think will be any different. I think there's a couple of finicky, I don't want to call them gimmicky holes, but there's a lot of strategy that comes into play on some of these shots. And not to say that Americans aren't capable of doing that. I just think based on our track record and the history that we have shown playing at events outside the United States and in those conditions, they just don't normally end well for us. And I would love to be proven wrong. I would love to see, Colin was going to get mad at me, but Wyndham Clark bring it home. But at the same
He's
time,
not going to,
but
bro.
at the
What are
same
we
time,
talking about?
I think we got to go in with the expectation too that it's not a typical week for these guys, right? Like, yeah, they're there prepping, but let's face it, they're going to be taking time off to go watch other events, hang out with other athletes. Like, it's not their typical run of the mill event, and I think that has to be considered as well. So again, I'd love for one of our guys to win, but there's a lot of other outside factors at play.
Do you think that do you think that on some level, like, because obviously, like, we have no shortage of, like, great, like, well-known golfers in America, but do you think there are some of, like, American golfers who are a little bit down that, like, FedEx Cup ranking, like, board that are, like, I'm kind of happy I'm not going? Like, because I feel like the Olympics, like, in the grand scheme of golf, like, it's not that big of a deal. Just kind of like how, like, I feel like soccer in the Olympics is not that big of a deal, like, in the grand scheme, because, like, they have their big tournaments that mean so much more.
Yeah, I don't know, Kamlo, because it's a big deal because it hadn't been in the Olympics for such a long time. Right. The golf had just gotten back. Justin Rose won the first golf gold medal. I think that was only in 2016 that they had in like 100 years. The tennis players take it real serious, and we always try to compare golf and tennis because of the nature of the individual aspects of those sports. The tennis players are into it. They are pumped. They treat this as a major. Like, this winning a gold medal at the Olympics for tennis is like, up there. Like, that's something they talk about. It's not on the back burner. I know for golf it is a little bit because, again, it hasn't always been there, but it means something. Justin Rose having that gold medal means something. Xander having that gold medal means something. It may not be the same as Andy Murray's gold medal, but it's still, you're representing your country. You're beating the best players. It's just like Nathan said, it's different. It's a different field. I think I remember. Here's another. Let's give him another shout out. Rory Sabatini qualified for the Olympics last time. I wouldn't be shocked if he qualified for this time because of he represents Slovakia, right? And the way they do the who plays in the Olympics is based off of, like, essentially the country you represent, like the top 2 people from the country you represent, or if you're in the top 15, it's the world golf rankings. It's 4 max people you have, which is why the U.S. has 4, because they have 4 people, the top 4 people inside the top 15 of the world golf rankings. So, CT Pan, I think, won bronze last time. He's a guy I don't think you've heard of since he won that bronze, right? So it is a different event. It still means something. There are still major champions in the field. Shane Lowry's in it, right? People like that. It means a lot.
And that's not, but yeah, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying it doesn't mean a lot. There's no doubt in my mind. Like, obviously, like, any one of us, any American or any person who just has any sort of pride for their country would kill to be able to earn any sort of medal or compete for their country on the Olympic stage. My point was, the Olympics happened during the last 2 events leading up to FedEx, right? We only have 2 events left for players to get those coveted points, and there's a lot of really good golfers who are on the outside looking in. And so, like, yes, you would want to play in the Olympics. Yes, you would want to represent America and have a chance to earn a medal, but, like, it's also a black mark on your career if you don't qualify in, like, the top 75 or even in the top 50 to get those exemptions for the next year, or those invitations for the next year for majors, right? That's kind of where I was going with it, because, like,
yeah, but all the guys in the Olympics will have that. Like, it's not it. To me, it's a moot point. I think the guys who are staying behind, who didn't qualify, may sit there and say the opposite of, you know what? I don't have to beat Scotty next week. I don't have to beat Xander. I don't have to beat is it Morikawa? Is that our other person? I don't have to beat Colin. Wyndham Clark's not going to be here. He is a major champion. So they might, and again, Shane Lowry's not going to be there. There's countless other guys who, Alex Noren's not going to be there. There's guys who are consistently good players that are now may not be in that field that you can now help yourself get over that hump.
But they ordinarily, Nick, those top players take the last two events off. Most players will take the 3M and the Wyndham off because they're already comfortably in. I mean, like you talk about the guys who like who had a chance because like the Olympics doesn't go off of just this year's points and like standings to pick the golfers, obviously, because Wyndham Clark's on the team. But like if like it had been a chance like that, Jordan Spieth could have been on the Olympic team. Like if I'm Jordan, I'm happy I'm not on the Olympic team because I'm standing, I think, sub 60 and have a chance to play 2 more events and get points to qualify for top 50.
Oh yeah,
you see what I mean? That's kind of where I'm going with it.
But I still think Jordan Spieth would trade that for an Olympic gold medal.
I don't agree with that.
So I think the other thing you have to consider too is, yes, the vast majority of our sports here in the United States feature a world, like, I don't want to call it a population, but like a worldly roster, right? So like basketball, it's not like the NBA isn't just people from the United States. Baseball's not just people from the United States, right? Golf, these guys are doing it on a weekly basis though. So I think for a lot of guys too, when they go to this event, this idea of like national pride is a huge, huge thing for them. But I don't think it's so much so that you might see from another sport because they might not have that experience of playing against the other countries like golf does. And I'm sure the 4 guys that are going, it's the greatest thing in the world for them. They're super excited. They can't wait to do it. And I'm sure they want to do really well. But I think on the other side of it, there might not be as much, razzle dazzle for it because these guys are like, well, this is just kind of like another week for us, but except we're in Paris. So I mean, I think that's part of it too. I mean, they know that they're playing against the best people in the world every week, whereas some sports, this is like swimming. I can't think of a swimming event just because I'm not a swimmer, like where Michael Phelps was going up against somebody from pick a country just to
sure.
see if he's the best swimmer in the world. So I think that's part of it too. And then to just answer your question, Kamlo, I don't know if I could think of anybody that is happy that they're at home more than being at the Olympics. I'm sure if you asked them all, they would all love to go just because it's a once in a 4-year thing. And the guys that would be in contention are like, well, I'm not really worried about my tour card for next year because I'm close enough, or I probably won an event this year, or I've earned enough money this year where they're not too worried about it. It's probably the guys outside the top 150 that are like, man, I really am glad that Scotty's not here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are any of our Olympian golfers single? Because remember, the Olympic Village provides you with condoms. So, well, just saying.
Nick. All those cardboard beds.
Yep.
I do have a question for Nathan about the course at the Olympics. Is
golf
there
national.
the golf, French golf
national.
Le golf. National. Oui. Is there any course in the U.S. that this compares to, or any course out there that this compares to that we would possibly know? And I say that because it's in the center of France. Like, it's not a link style course, so it looks more like it might help the Americans.
Yeah, I would think maybe like, and this probably isn't a remotely good comparison, but just kind of looking at it and kind of doing the flybys and the looks that I've seen of it, I think it's very reminiscent of like a Sawgrass or like a Bay Hill, where it's kind of got like water hazards you got to carry, and they play a factor in the entire hole. It's not just maybe like a little pond that's like 50 yards off to the right of the fairway. Like, there are some fairways where you've got a pond going down the entire side of it, or behind the entire green is a lake or something that you got to factor. So I would think of it as more as one of those courses.
It kind of gave me Marco Simone vibes.
Yeah.
Like, kind of looking at it, like the layout of it and where the water is. It didn't look like a particularly long course, no?
No, I mean it's again it's placements and how they're going to modify that course for an Olympic setup. So are they going to grow the grass out? Are they going to move tee boxes back? How are they going to place pins strategically and stuff like that? Where are they going to make sure landing areas are? So I mean I guarantee you the IGF is definitely got some masterminds behind this that have some diabolical setups just to kind of make these guys scratch their heads.
I did have just going back to the Open. I had a question. I was dying to ask you. I don't know if you saw this on Sunday, but Justin Rose on like the 600-yard par five hit driver, then hit driver off the deck in the middle of the fairway, and it was freaking awesome. I loved it. I love the aggressiveness. I gotta go for it. But can you kind of break down how difficult that is? Because he made that look easy. He smoked that thing to the green, but that is absurdly difficult. That club is not designed to do anything remotely like that.
So his driver probably has like 9 degrees of loft on it, which is like 4 more than a putter. And it's funny that you mentioned it because I played Caves Valley today with a buddy of mine, a former player, and his dad out in Owings Mills, where they held the BMW 2 years ago. And my buddy actually did this on a par five, and we had caddies, so we're walking. This is a super nice place. Like, it puts Creighton Farms to shame, and I love Creighton Farms, but we've got caddies, and the caddy's following me because I'm looking for my ball in the fescue, and he's just walking down the fairway with his driver from the tee, and the caddy's like, "You good?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm good." And he just steps up and rips it and puts it like 25 yards short of the green. And the guy's like, "I've never seen anybody do that before out here." And he's like, and he just like walks to just keeps walking. And it's pretty impressive. But to break down that shot, I mean, you got to think about it this way. Like, it's just like hitting a long iron or a fairway wood. You got to sweep it off the fairway. And a lot of it has to do with where you catch it on the downswing. So with a driver, traditionally, when you tee it up, the idea is that you catch it as you are coming up on your follow through, and that's what helps you generate more loft, right? So in this instant, because you've got like that much of like a height difference between like the ball and the ground, essentially, when you catch it, there is like a fraction of like a degree that you've got to fit that window into, and if not, you hit a worm burner, or you chunk it and it popples down the fairway. So it's tough. I mean, I can maybe count on one hand how many times I've tried it and it's worked well. But it's also kind of one of those things in the moment where, I mean, he's probably got the thought process of, if I catch it, then it's going to stay below the wind anyway, so it's just going to run out. And I mean, it's just something you don't see a lot of because these courses don't really have the length anymore to stop guys from getting to places in 2. And if they don't get there in 2, they're going to lay up to a yardage anyways. So it's an impressive shot, and his shot, having seen that, was kind of one of those like, oh wow, so the pros do it too.
I like that. I like that moment because, like, I think at that point in time in like the tournament, Rose was probably the only one that had a serious shot of keeping pace with Xander, right, Nick? And
he was playing with Xander, I believe.
Yeah, he was.
So he's seeing it all.
I like that because it gave like, and you guys probably felt the same way because you watch a lot of golf, but it gave me like some serious like match play vibes. And Xander, or it's almost like Rose's thought process was like, we just got to full send everything, like, because we have to play. I have to play aggressive, full send everything, just to have a chance of forcing a playoff or maybe taking a lead if he messes up. And I really love that. I thought that was so awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I think Yeah, go ahead, Nathan.
I'm lagging a little bit now, basement. I mean, you got to think of it too. Like, that match play thing was definitely going through his head. He's thinking, if I can pull this off, it puts the pressure back on him. And I mean, Xander, I think, said in his press conference afterwards, yeah, he was nervous, but he was calm. And his caddy's like, "Well, I was going to throw up on the 18th tee box." Like,
yeah, I saw that.
it's different when you're playing with somebody that you know, like, hey, this is the only guy that can catch me, and like you said, like they're pulling off the shots. Like it puts the pressure on you, and I mean, we've all kind of jokingly said, hey, you know, a buck closest to the pin here, you know, type games and stuff. But it's different when probably the most prestigious championship is on the line and you're hitting driver off the deck.
Yeah. Yeah. Another question for you. Who surprised you the most positively from the Open, and besides maybe Xander? And who surprised you most maybe negatively? Like you had much higher expectations for this person.
I'm extremely impressed and happy for Billy Horschel. If you guys have followed any of him in the past, 5-10 years, you know that he's had quite the battle with his own, demons and his golf game and his temper, and he was the guy nobody wanted to play with for a little bit because of his temper and how he lashed out when he hit a bad shot. So seeing him kind of hit his upswing again and play well is great to see. So I was really happy for him, and it was a nice, pleasant surprise to see him. And God, I wish I could pull off a cardigan like that with a polo. That's just not my style on a Sunday.
Yes.
Disappointing. I mean, you kind of got to go with Lowry. I mean, he tore it up the first 2 days, and then
he played himself right out of it.
And I'm going to say this because it's all I've listened to basically in my car with my daughter is the wheels on the bus for him fell off. And my daughter will go like this. And it's hilarious because I'll be driving and she just goes, you look at the back seat, she's like, I'm like, wheels on the bus, and she goes, so yeah, like it was sad to see the wheels on his bus fall off, especially being somebody that grew up playing in those conditions and whatnot, that you wouldn't expect a slip like that to happen. But it also kind of goes just back to the luck of the draw with the early, like tee times. They mentioned it on day 2 when the conditions in the afternoon just ripped people to shreds. That, if you got stuck with the early tee time the first day and the late tee time the second day, like chances are you missed the cut. So I mean, it's just the nature of the Open. Like at any given time, like you hit one bad shot and your round just goes up in the air like smoke. And I think that's why people love it so much, is that because the blow up hole is every time you step on a tee box.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'd like to point out all of our picks were horrendous for this. Yeah,
that was my
major.
most disappointing.
Yeah, my guy didn't make the cut.
Yep, none of ours made the cut.
Okay.
No,
except
one.
Bobby
Mack.
Yep. Yep, he's the only one who made the cut, and he finished his final round before the leaders even teed off. So.
Nathan was also the only one who got 4 picks. Just saying.
He did. Yes, he did. But yeah, watching that, I was like, man, literally just could have picked anyone else but us, who we picked. So good thing, at least I didn't have any money going on it. I can't say the same about you, boy, or AJ. I'm sure
I stopped gambling after March Madness 2 years ago.
I was feeling never going to financially recover from this.
Yeah. I was feeling real good about myself, and then one weekend, and it was all gone. I was like, "Well, I'm just gonna stop right there."
That tracks.
That's me anytime I walk into a pro shop at a nice country club.
Yeah, right. What about what are our thoughts on the Englishman Daniel Brown? Right, I feel like that name is something that deserves some conversation. I mean, he was ranked 272 coming into this event, and up until Sunday, like early to mid-round Sunday, he had a very real chance of pulling this off and being like the second lowest ranked golfer to win a major.
Yeah,
I mean, I thought that was an outstanding performance for him.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that one person every week that just kind of sneaks through everybody's guess for the week, and it just happened to be him this week. And like you said, it's a heck of a story. I mean, outside 250 and place 8th and make a nice 6-figure paycheck, and Now
Mhm.
everybody's talking about you. I mean, he's probably never going to have to worry about, qualifying for some events from here on out, depending on, when his exemptions run out.
I mean, you would think the author of the Da Vinci Code wouldn't have issues getting into any of these tournaments, but
There it is.
Son of a bitch.
Was he not the right Dan Brown?
Different Dan Brown, Nick.
Oh, it's such a unique name. I thought it had to be him.
Jesus.
Anyway, I do have if we are trying to wrap this up, but I do have Scotty's Scotty's finishes of 2024. If you want those,
Go for
All right,
it.
let's hear him.
Masters obviously won. PGA tied 8th. U.S. Open tied 41st, and then the Open tied 7th.
So I think you got to take Xander's results.
I do have
majors, obviously.
I do have the earnings as well.
Okay,
Let's hear the earnings.
So Xander's coming in at approximately 15.8 million this year. Nothing to sneeze at.
No.
Scotty Scheffler is over 28 million.
That's pretty good too. I guess you're. It is worth pointing out. Scotty won the Players in March.
He did, yes.
Which is
well, you look at his 2024 season. There's a lot of ones on there.
Yes. Yeah. So I mean, it is a valid discussion point of who you would take, because it's not like Xander only showed up in the two things he won, right? We said he finished in the top 10 the other two majors. I think he was second at the Players as well, and another second up there when Scotty was winning his tournament. So it's not
he was second at the Players,
right? So it's not like he's been erratic either. He's been consistently up there. So I think it's very valid. And like Nathan said, now Xander belongs in that conversation with Scotty every week, and belongs in the conversation at the Olympics, especially as the defending gold medalist. Excuse me. I guess just a preview question going forward for next year. Who are your eyes on the most for the majors next year? Because I know my answer would be Rory, because we just watched him miss the cut after the debacle at the U.S. Open. So that's a very rough way to finish the major year. So I would think my eyes are on him to see does he have the Czech Knoblauchs? Is he got the yips or something?
For me,
I don't know.
I think I would be watching. My eyesight is going to be like. Are we talking like who do we think is going to have the better performance?
Who you're looking for.
Ludwig Aubert.
I like that, Nathan.
That's a good pick. I'll take Max Homa.
Thank you.
I think he's knocking on the door, and the last couple haven't been great, but I think he's starting to figure it out.
Yeah.
Give me Tyrrell Hatton. I'm sticking with him. He's one of the few golfers
Piss
I know.
off. If you win.
Did you see him carry his own clubs?
Yeah, Nick and I were talking about that. He said I didn't deserve to have my clubs carried after that tee shot.
That's why I love him.
Nick, what about you?
Well, I just said Rory just to pay attention to, because I think it's a compelling storyline. It always is with him, whether fair or unfair, right? So I think looking at him, but I guess if you're gonna give me a guy who I think will have a chance to win one of these, I'll go with Tom Kim. I think by the time next year, because he's only like 21, 22, so give him another. He needs that more experience. Yeah, to get some lumps. I think by next year, maybe not at the Masters, but the second or third major might be a guy that you're gonna, see up there. Because yes, Aubert is young as well, but Tom Kim is green a little bit more than Aubert. I mean, Aubert is a former Ryder Cup champion, right? That's nuts. Even though he hasn't had a full year on tour, so it feels like the expectations are more even keeled with Aubert. But Tom Kim has kind of had some ups and downs, partly because he is. I mean, like I said, 21, maybe 22. So I would say Tom Kim. Maybe he might break out next year.
Well,
Okay.
I think
Anything else
Tom
before
Kim
we
is-
move on, Nathan?
Well, let's just say I think Tom Kim is kind of sad that he's birthday buddies with Scotty, and Scotty gets all the attention on his birthday probably. So that's probably why
That's tough.
he's all sad. But they're like best buds too, which I think is just absolutely.
That's
And you
pretty
guys are
cool.
gonna absolutely just destroy me for this, but it's adorable. They're like BFFs, holding hands and skipping and all that stuff. It's cute to see.
F is for friends who do stuff together.
Pretty much.
I got one more golf thing before we move on, Nick.
Okay. Lay it on us.
What would you say if I told you Xander Schauffele wasn't the biggest winner in golf this weekend? Does that move any needles for you? Is that a good teaser?
Go for it.
Xander Schauffele didn't even win the most FedEx Cup points this weekend.
Oh, because the Barracuda Championship.
Nick Dunlap. That's right. Nick Dunlap won the Barracuda, which means that since he now has a win while having his tour card, he's going to get the other points from American Express now, which shoots him up 800 points in FedEx Cup points now, as opposed to Xander's 750. So you look at Nick Dunlap prior to this weekend, he was sitting at, I think, like 96th. And once the FedEx Cup points are registered, he's going to be sitting probably top 50. If not, he's going to be somewhere between like 55 and 49. I don't have an exact number because he has earned some other points in other tournaments, but since he's won, he's going to get those American Express points, which is huge because that puts him up there in top 50 could potentially put him in there with 2 events left to play. Top 50, which means a lot of exemptions for next year for the like brand new touring pro out of Roll Tide, Alabama.
Can we also give him his
Greenbow,
paycheck
Alabama.
from the win too?
From
We need to
Barracuda?
retroactively.
Oh, you
No,
mean from America?
the-
I don't know
Yeah,
if he
can we,
gets
like-
from American Express.
He
I don't know
doesn't,
if he
but
gets
we need to
that.
retroactively give him that. And then the heartwarming story with
I
that
agree.
too is he had buddies that were fishing and they stopped their fishing trip to come see him finish, which was pretty cool too.
Oh, you want to talk adorable. That'll warm your heart right there. I love that.
Bunch of
But yeah,
country
I
boys
heard that.
fishing.
I heard that on a different podcast. I listened to Billy Hurley III's golf podcast with some of his buddies, and they were talking about that, and I couldn't believe it. I went through and fact checked them. It's crazy to think that we just had a guy who won and gets 800 FedEx Cup points now.
I'm glad
Isn't
you
that cool?
I'm glad you fact checked them. I hope no one's fact checking us because just putting it out there.
Yeah, I mean, look at our picks.
Yeah, exactly. What facts do we know?
I don't know what I'm doing.
No one knows what they're doing, apparently. All right, Nathan, always a pleasure. Thank you for stopping by. You can stick around for the rest of the show. You got some baby duty to take care of, figuratively and literally.
Duty.
But
duty.
also, August 10th is the start of the Olympic golf tournament. So make sure we're ready for that.
Mark your calendars.
I love it. Thank you, Nathan. Always a pleasure.
Thanks,
See you,
Nathan.
man.
Yep. Thanks again,
Thank you.
fellas.
All right, so that's going to go ahead and move us on to our next
God,
segment.
I love having that guy on.
Yes, I do too.
I love having Nathan on.
He always knows the right thing to say, and we did give him a little grief about his picks. Our picks again were even worse. I think. Some of our guys almost finished in last, like close to where you would see John Daly after he withdrew on the leaderboard. That's close to where our guys finished.
Thanks for listening to part 1 of this week's episode. Listen to the rest of the recording in part 2.